Okay, Chairman, it looks like we have all 5, just so you know.
That's good because it's 1 p.m. and we'll call this meeting to order. And let the record reflect all 5 commissioners are here. We'll start with a pledge of allegiance led by Chief Deputy District Attorney, Mr. Doug Ritchie. Mr. Ritchie.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Natalie Wood for the record. Barry, can you hear me okay? Or did we freeze?
I got muted.
There he is.
I didn't mute me. Somebody did. But that's okay. We'll talk about taking public comment. You want me to read that all again?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we have the old one in the printed document, which talks about the lights. We'll take public comment at this point. And the public comment line was open at 1 p.m. And we will continue to take public comment until 5 minutes after the last public comment. Everyone is encouraged to speak up. There'll be public comment at the beginning and another public comment at the end of the session today. So there'll only be 2 periods of public comment. At this point, the public comment line is open. Do we have any public comment?
Natalie Wood for the record. Yes, sir. I will start playing them.
Okay.
Quoting Nevada Planning Guide, February 2017, Ellie Waller, W-A-L-L-E-R. A master plan or comprehensive plan is an official public document adopted by a governing body as a guide to decisions about the physical development of the governed area. The master plan identifies current issues and needs in the community based on research, analysis, and extensive public input. Page 5, Nevada planning law does not mandate how often master plans should be prepared or updated. I am requesting, and many support me in extending the Wood-Rogers completion after December 2020 to ensure the master plan and community plans are updated adequately and accurately and not rushed. Page 6, master plan elements. All master plans contain specific elements, and these elements typically cover functional areas such as land use and transportation. The master plan element contains goals, policies, and actions to meet the needs of the affected community as described. The goals of the community are fundamental to the planning process. They provide the means for making choices and affirming decisions. For this reason, goals need to be clear, simple declarations of what the community hopes to achieve. I continue to request community plans must be updated as part of the master plan process.
Okay, next.
Lynn Muzzy, M-U-Z-Z-Y. There is a growing recognition among lake residents that too much tourism is diminishing their quality of life. A few days ago, lake residents waved signs at tourists entering the lake area at 5 major intersections. Thousands of motorists were greeted by demonstrators complaining about traffic gridlock. Some pointed out that visitors rarely wear masks, a concern with recent new COVID-19 cases. Beaches have been trashed. Pedestrians frequently wander across the streets and not in the crosswalks in State Line's casino corridor. Comments from the residents included, tourists show no respect for us. All they care about is themselves. The traffic never stops. The noise never stops. I am here to inform the tourists to keep their expletive trash off of our beaches. Other protesters were not as polite. Signs read, go home, welcome to a COVID hotspot, your entitlement sucks, and tourists go away. An Incline Village resident editorialized in the Tahoe Tribune that her community's livability index is impacted by out-of-state tourists who see the village as party central and Washoe County officials who see it as the cash cow. Over the past 10 years, more than 1,000 short-term rentals have transformed Incline from an alpine village to a tourist resort. Then we have the Lake 20 car show from last week, which turned ugly. Douglas County sheriffs responded to 25 calls for service at Lake 20, including speeding, parking, and DUI. The South Lake Tahoe Police Department increased enforcement over the weekend to deal with the show, requesting help from the El Dorado County Sheriff's Office and California Highway Patrol. In total, officers responded to 525 calls for service over the weekend. DCSO also received a report that Mont Bleu security officers were battered and shoved to the ground during an incident involving people participating in the show. The promoter, Drew Murrin, Commissioner Penzel, that's one of your PR guys, right? He apparently never got a permit and may not suffer any consequences. Tourists who wander into future free-for-alls like this one might not like the experience. If Tahoe's anti-tourist sentiment continues, and especially if some visitors get snarled up in some physical future altercation like Lake 20, what message will that send to reservation agents and corporate planners? How eager will they be to book concert audiences or client employees into an event center that's viewed as located in a hostile venue? The event center is looking more and more like an especially bad investment for Douglas County taxpayers.
Okay, next.
Slade. I was not at all impressed with the presentation from Wood Rogers, UNR, and Logan Simpson last week on the 20-year master plan update. Notably deficient and biased were the population projections by the UNR Center for Economic Development, who yet again showed their bias towards development. They exhibited no research nor any analysis, but cherry-picked some data from the state demographer that anyone could quickly find. Their data suggested that Douglas County will grow by only 1,061 people in the next 18 years, an annual rate of 0.1, which is absurd. They could have chosen the state demographer's projections from 2016, 17, or 18, all of which showed triple that growth rate, or his 5-year projection from 2020, which showed a great growth rate 4 times as high. But instead, they chose a draft number from 2019, apparently because it showed the lowest possible growth. Where's their analysis? They made no mention of the more than 7,000 new residential units that have various levels of approval already. At the Douglas County average size of 2.3 people per household, that would equate to over 16,000 more people. That seems like an obvious misrepresentation so that they can argue for more approvals of further developments rather than less, as it should be. For Commissioner Walsh to state that only growing by 1,061 people by 2038 would be terrific really adds insult to the numerous unwanted and unwarranted injuries he has caused to Douglas County by his and others' willful disregard of the master plan and the approval of Park Ranch Amendment last year. Most residents do want slow growth, as evidenced by their vote to approve the Sustainable Growth Initiative. But the so-called data analysis from UNR is as biased as it is misleading. In addition, I'm concerned about the discussion of the growth management element of the master plan. Would like to know who questioned policy 2.8, that states that urban service boundaries can only be modified during 5-year updates. I would remind you that our 96 master plan stated, quote, because there is adequate capacity within the defined urban service areas to accommodate almost all of the residential growth that can occur within the limit of the groundwater resource and capital improvement capabilities of the county, there is no need to identify additional future urban service areas, unquote. That is as true now as it was then, but was removed by pro-development forces to allow for more growth. It should be added back into the master plan and should include the dictate from the Minden-Gardnerville Plan for Prosperity that no further expansion of the town or urban service area boundaries should be allowed until the towns are more than 85% built out. which was shamefully ignored recently by the towns and by county commissioners to accommodate the unwanted and unwarranted park ranch development.
Okay, next.
Good afternoon. My name is Phil Oliveri, Phil Oliveri, and I am speaking against the vacation home rental policies that are in effect for Douglas County. It is our feeling that VHR policies favor the homeowners, not residents in the neighborhoods of Middle and Upper Kingsbury. Host compliance is gone, and we understand you've hired a new company, but you don't need that company. Why? Because validation never takes place. How do I know? Because you don't have people on duty during the time of the incidents. So really, the validation policy is a joke. We recommend you hire more sheriff personnel for validation off hours. As far as COVID-19 goes, we're getting more visitors due to California restrictions. VHRs are party houses and not retreats. In the old days, people would come up here to enjoy the lake, enjoy the golf courses, and really be here with their families. Not now. It's one big party after another. And by the way, there are no masks being worn on the Nevada side. So South Lake Tahoe has a new mandate starting tomorrow. Why not us? We should be synchronized with South Lake Tahoe in policy. Our parks and beaches are overcrowded and they're a trash mess. People are afraid to venture outside in trails or the beaches with their family. We need action, not vague, unenforceable policies. Thank our Sheriff's Department for being so responsive and look forward to continuing to work with them in the future. We need your help as commissioners of Douglas County. And at election time, we'll remember who is supporting the citizens of Douglas County and who is selling us out. Thank you.
Next.
This is James McCallum for the record, JamesMcCallip, and I support Dave Maxwell for the Audit Committee. I believe since Dave Maxwell has been chosen as the chairman, it's obvious he has the respect and confidence of the committee. Any attempt to not select him to continue on that committee has to be seen as an attempt to dismantle it. I know Dave to be a person of the utmost integrity, who only wants to serve the county. The BOCC in the past has officially reappointed members of committees, especially if they've chaired that committee. There's no reason not to continue that policy. Please reappoint Dave Maxwell to the Audit Committee. Next point I'd like to make is to join with those who have complained about lack of public comment. I understand the difficulties of Zoom meetings in these trying times. However, making decisions that affect citizens without taking public comment is wrong. Well, elected by the people and should want to hear from them on each issue is the right thing to do. Lastly, I'm looking forward to the presentations by Terry Willoughby today. Thank you.
Okay, next.
My name is Tom Serino. My last name is spelled Cerino. My phone number is 775-588-2726. I live at the top of Kingsbury in Kingsbury Village at 393 Barrett Drive. My concern is on vacation home rentals. I am not totally against vacation home rentals. At the top of Kingsbury, going south towards Heavenly Ski Resort, is Tramway and South Benjamin. Both these avenues to Heavenly have condos, timeshares, several bars and restaurants. That is where these businesses are legal and needed. Driving north on North Benjamin is a neighborhood that I built my home in 1977. The CCNRs are for single family homes only. There are many VHRs now ruining our once quiet, once desirable neighborhood. The VHR alongside me is not licensed since I checked with code enforcement. How are these businesses in these single family neighborhoods even legal? How can I check the VHRs for being licensed? Who is responsible for shutting them down? Thank you.
Okay, next.
My name is Gary, Gary Snelson, Snelson. I live at Upper Kingsbury. My number is 310-245-7526. We are full-time residents of Upper Kingsbury, and we're very upset with all the vacation rentals around us. They make noise late at night. There's one just down the way from us where they have parties going on late at night. The police have been called several times. It's really annoying. Besides them partying late, they have people setting up tables down the street from us where they're drinking, and apparently they're trying to party outside, but they're actually setting up tables on the side of the street. There's parking all over on our streets. There's not enough parking spots in these homes. It's a disaster up here in Upper Kingsbury. Please do something about it. If you need to, you can reach me. My name is Gary Snelson, S-N-E-L-S-O-N, 310-245-7526. Thank you.
Okay, that was the last message received at 1:05 p.m.
Okay, it's 1:15. We'll go to 1:20. Make sure everybody that wanted to call in is accommodated.
Chair, can we
Yes, sir.
banter back and forth while we're waiting?
Go for it.
Patrick, one of the gentlemen who called in about the VHRs is the gentleman who called me, and I sent the information over to you. And I think they all live up in that same area. So that's just a follow-up on, and I sent the information back to you that you requested as well so that we can get on it. You got your mic. There you go.
Yeah. Yes, sir. I received that, and I just got some response back from code enforcement. The one you're referencing, they're aware of that and are doing reviews and taking action.
Patrick, let me interrupt at this point. That isn't agendized. You can tell him, I think, that you've got something going, but I don't think we can discuss the issue anymore. I don't know, Mr. Ritchie?
No, that's all I was going to say.
Okay.
Chairman Doug Ritchie with the District Attorney's Office. I would recommend that you not have any kind of discussion while public comment is open. It's for the public.
Got 2 more minutes. Okay, we have 1:20. We've waited another 5 minutes. We'll move on. For next item is approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or subtractions to the agenda? Seeing or hearing none, we'll move on. Is there a motion for approval of the agenda?
Mr. Chair, I move approval of the agenda as presented.
Second.
So I have a motion by Commissioner Walsh, a second by Commissioner Nelson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays? No nays. Motion carries 5-0. Approval of the previous minutes. We have the minutes for July 16th. All the members of the board are there. Any corrections or additions to the minutes? Hearing none. Do we have a motion for approval of the previous minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the draft minutes of the July 16, 2020 regular meeting of the Board of County Commissioners.
Second.
Second.
Do I have a motion by Commissioner Rice and 2 seconds by Commissioner Walsh and Commissioner Nelson? And we're going to adjourn as the Board of County Commissioners and convene.
We have
as
to have a vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No nays. The motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Commissioner Rice. Now, we'll adjourn as the Board of County Commissioners and convene as the Douglas County Liquor Board. Item 1 for possible action, discussion to approve the addition of an entertainment endorsement license to the existing on-site unrestricted retail liquor license and restricted gaming license for the Tahoe Tavern and Grill LLC. Tahoe Tavern and Grill LLC is represented by owners Wendy and David Thoreau and co-applicant Jesse Fenton, and all three have signed a waiver of notice of hearing. Tahoe Tavern and Grill LLC is located at 219 Kingsbury Grade, State Line, Nevada 89449. Captain Michitarian.
Good afternoon. This applicant has completed all the required paperwork, paid the applicable fees, and we are not in objection to this addition.
Any questions from members of the board? Seeing none, ask the board, so it's the pleasure of the board. Commissioner Walsh.
Commissioner, thank you, Mr. Chair. I move we approve the addition of an entertainment endorsement license to the existing on-site unrestricted retail liquor license and restricted gaming license for Tahoe Tavern and Grill LLC as presented.
I'll second.
So I have a motion by Commissioner Walsh, a second by Commissioner Rice. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays? No nays, the motion carries 5-0. We'll move on to the consent calendar. We'll look for approval of that. Any item that any commissioner wants to pull, or anybody? Seeing no items and no raised hands, we'll look for a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Move that we approve the consent calendar as presented, items A through L. Second.
Do I have a motion by Commissioner Rice, a second by Commissioner Nelson? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No nays, the motion carries 5-0. We'll move on to the administrative calendar. And item 1 for possible action, discussion on 2 appointments to the Audit Committee for 4-year terms from August 2020 through April 2024. Mr. Cates.
Muted.
There we go.
There you
Too many
go.
windows open. Okay, sorry about this. Hang on. Let me get back to where I was. Okay, thank you. This is a carryover from the last meeting. There's two vacancies on the audit committee. We solicited applications at the last meeting. We didn't have one of the members or one of the applicants with us. We do have him today as well as the other two applicants. So I think we can pick up where we left off at the last meeting.
All right. We'll ask if any of the applicants want to make a statement. Mr. Maxwell?
Yes. David Maxwell, for the record. I just want to remind the board that I've had quite a bit of experience on the audit committee. Been chairman for 2 years, and been in the county for 7 years now. I've completed the Leadership Douglas County course in 2017, so I have a nice overview of the county. And has been on the Debt Management Commission before the Audit Committee. And I know the issues in the county, the water development, and the audit issues. Our procedures are our highest assessed risk to the county. And our cash processes, cash handling processes are woefully inadequate, and especially in the candy dance and the air show. So I just wanted to remind the board of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Bizic, do you want to make a statement?
I was asked to attend this meeting. I'm a resident here for about a year. I'm a CPA with extensive audit experience. I had my own CPA firm. I was an audit manager for a national CPA firm. And I thought that I could lend my expertise to the county.
Thank you. And Mr. McCoy, would you like to make a statement?
Yes, sir, I would. Thank you. I'm a relative newcomer here, and I come at this position from a very different aspect, I think, than either a CPA or an auditor. I'm the guy who's had to stand in front of boards of commissioners, boards of supervisors, mayors, and DOD officials and explain to them that I don't have the money to get their projects done because it's been mishandled. I usually am called in after something has already started, but now that it's started to go a little awry, they bring me into the expectation that I'm going to get it fixed. So I believe that the audit process starts first. I've done a lot of audits of very large projects, gotten them back on track, and have an extensive background in that. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions by members of the board?
Mr. Chairman, as a reminder, which one was not able to make the last meeting?
Mr. Bizic.
That's my understanding also.
Any other questions from board members? Seeing none, then we'll be looking for a motion. Mr. Engels?
I reviewed their resumes, and it's typical of some of the folks that move here and live here. And all of these gentlemen have qualifications that are extraordinarily valuable for the county at large. The one advantage that Mr. Maxwell has is that he's been at it with the county for quite a while, and he is the chair or president of the current audit committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Then we'll be looking for a motion. I think what we'll do is have a motion that approves two. So I think the nomination would be nominated for the position or approved for the position. With that, Mr. Ritchie, do we need to vote on them individually, or can we do two?
Thank you, Chairman Doug Ritchie with the District Attorney's Office. No, it's agendized for two. You could have a motion that included the 2 nominees.
Okay.
Mr.
Do we have a
Chairman,
motion from anyone?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we appoint Mr. Maxwell and Mr. McCoy to the audit committee for 4-year terms from August 2020 through April 2024.
Second.
And, I did not hear the name of the first person that you nominated.
Mr. Maxwell and Mr. McCoy.
Okay. And a second by Commissioner Ingalls.
Yes.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Rice, a second by Commissioner Ingalls. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No nays. The motion carries 5-0. Thank you, gentlemen, for applying. We appreciate it.
And if I may, Mr. Bisich, can you hear me? Your qualifications will be valuable in the future, sir, and please don't hesitate to keep working with us. Thank you.
Mr. Bisich, did you have something to say? Okay.
I have a comment to make if I could, while we're still on the subject.
You going to talk us out of it?
No, sir.
Okay.
I'm going to say that I would give it my utmost to serve as best as I can on this, continue to serve as best I can on this audit committee. Thank you so much.
All right. Move on to number 2, finance for possible action. Discussion to authorize an amendment to existing E.D. Bailey audit contract, increasing the annual compensation for the audits of Douglas County for fiscal years 2019-20 and 2020 to 21 in the amount of $19,000 annually. Extend the term of the contract to include audits for fiscal years 2021 through 2022 through 2023 to 2024, and authorize the Chief Financial Officer to execute the attached engagement letter and the contract amendment. Ms. Willoughby.
Thank you, Terry Willoughby for the record. As you may recall, last year was the first audit year with Bailey. We originally contracted with Ravensbrück, Trine and Day. They merged with Eide Bailey. They had significant overruns in their contract for the first fiscal year, which they have absorbed, but they did ask for a contract amendment, increasing the annual contract for $19,000 for the remaining contract. And then we've requested a contract extension through 2023, and I prepared that schedule. Their original contract was for 3 years with a 2-year extension. I'm recommending that we exercise that and go through the recommended term at this time. They've done excellent work. They've been invaluable to me during this CARES Act process and providing guidance, and I think they've done an excellent job on the audit. This was presented to the audit committee on August 12th, and they unanimously recommended approval of this contract. And I'd be happy to talk about any of the reasons for it, but it's pretty clearly laid out in the letter from Eide Bailey.
Questions from the board? Seeing none, I guess then we would go to whatever the pleasure of the board is.
Mr.
Do we
Chair.
have a motion? Commissioner Walsh.
Yes, thank you. Based on the audit committee recommendation, what was presented, I would move to authorize the amendment of the existing E.D. Bailey audit contract, increasing E.D. Bailey's compensation by $19,000 per year for the audits of Douglas County for the fiscal years 2019-20, 2020-21, and extend the term of the contract to include audits for the fiscal year 21-22 through 23-24, and authorize the Chief Financial Officer to execute the attached engagement letter and the contract amendment as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Walsh, a second by Commissioner Nelson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays? Nays, motion carries 5-0. So we'll move on to item 3 for presentation only, presentation of the monthly update to the Board of County Commissioners on major county revenue sources and economic indicators. Ms. Willoughby.
Yes, the reason I particularly pulled this, I normally would now present this on consent every month, but you will notice that there was it looked like our taxable sales increased for year over year, which I found unusual. And see, it went up slightly. I found that unusual. I talked to the state, and there were some anomalies that are included in the numbers that I thought the board and the public should be aware of that make up this increase over the prior year. There were some sales tax remittances that normally would have been received in March that were received in June. Also, there's a decision called the Wayfair decision, which applies to online sales. And I know it was reported in the paper that online sales had increased. That's true, but primarily the reason for it is not just because we're buying more things online. It's because those purchases were not included in the prior year number. They didn't start enforcing that decision until 2020, or at least they were not enforcing it in the prior year. So I want to make the board aware that, you know, it looks like we increased, but if you take those anomalies out, it's probably not an increase. So I just want to make the board aware of that it's not apples to apples. And I'd be happy to talk about anything else. We do continue to see continued growth in building permits. Unemployment rate is down. So we'll continue to report on these things every month. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Chair, can I ask a question?
Mr. Ingles.
In the chart, the utility delinquencies, is that any kind of a flag that indicates anything?
It's possible if it continues to be a trend, but we're watching that, and it is lower than the month before. So it's better than it was. So it's continuing to decline. It spiked up, and we're hoping it flattens out, goes back down.
Thank you.
Is that to follow up on his question, is that delinquencies in only the Douglas County utilities, or is that delinquencies across all the utilities, all the
Just
grid?
Douglas County. All just Douglas County. I don't have access to their information. Just Douglas
You can
County.
ask them for it, can't you?
I could, sure.
Well, then we would know if it's a trend. I mean, you only have 2,500 EDUs that you're looking at out of probably 15,000 EDUs. You know, so MGSD, do they have a delinquency rate with a grid, KGID, and all of them?
I will reach out to them, Chairman, for next month's report, and the towns as well.
And you started out by saying you would normally have this on consent. I don't think this should be on consent. I think this should be on admin all the time, because we need to know where we're going. That's the purpose of having it monthly.
No problem. I'd be happy to talk about it. Always happy to talk about it.
And we're happy to listen to you.
Okay, no problem. It will always be on administrative agenda.
Unless somebody wants to take it off. Are there any other questions on revenues? Commissioner Rice.
Thank you. Ms. Willoughby, I noticed that in the TOT and the room taxes here, that it's down 87%. And I had a question about that because according to the information I get at the Lake Tahoe Visitors Authority, in the Tahoe Douglas Visitors Authority that the hotels up there have been almost at capacity for the last couple of months. And the VHRs up here are going absolutely crazy. So I'm wondering why the 87% drop in income from the TOTs.
There's a couple of reasons for that. So for one is our revenue for June is not based on stays in June. So those are, if you stay in May, they are remitting to us the next month. So in May, this is really, the revenue for June is really people that stayed in May. Also, in June, we true up our figures for accounting purposes, so those would have been included in the prior year. And we haven't made all those adjustments yet. So anything that's revenue related to a stay that occurs in June, we have to record it in that fiscal year. So there is quite a lag, and there's some accounting differences between the 2 years. So I'll true that up by the next group. We'll have that completed by the next month.
In your opinion, in reality, how are we doing when it comes to collecting the TOT?
I can let you know a couple items that will be coming up that'll be affecting room tax. We are starting audits of room tax purveyors, our establishments. Those are going to be starting within the next few months. So I'll be doing virtual audits that will allow us to really gauge our effectiveness in collection. And I've heard that everything's full, so we should be seeing that revenue flow through. It's just there's a lag time between people stay. You think when you see people staying at the hotels that we're going to get that revenue right away, and it's not exactly true. We don't get it for another 30 to 45 days.
Thank you.
So it should be fine. Yeah.
Are they still sending those revenue reports via Pony Express? Is that why it's 45 days?
No, they're not. So if you stay in May, the establishment is not required to remit to us until the last day of the next month by code.
Commissioner Walsh?
Yes, I just have a comment. It looks like the unemployment rate is going in the right direction, which is good.
Yes, that's correct.
Other questions, comments? This is for presentation only. It's what we asked for. I appreciate you doing it, Ms. Welby. Thank you.
No problem. I tried to incorporate some more items this month, so.
Yeah, the building starts and all that, that'd be interesting. I think the other thing that we don't look at is the fees that are generated in other areas. Like all the fees for Parks and Rec, they've got to be down since the place has been closed. How's that affecting the operation of the community centers? Are they operating in a negative?
Well, it depends on what program you're looking at. So I will add that information to the report next month, and we can take a look at that together.
I have a question.
There's a lot of demand for the kids club programming.
And then the other question is, I'll get to you in just a second, Mr. Ingalls. The other part of that is our accomplishment of spending at this point. Are we on track? Are we, a quarter way through our year, and are we accomplishing our spending as we're supposed to, and our revenues balancing that spending?
Right.
Commissioner Ingalls?
So at this point, we're just closing July. I mean, even though you spend, it's probably now that we're seeing July invoicing. So I will include expenditures to date on the next report.
Okay.
Really only have 1 month of information at this point.
Thank
And
you.
a lot pertains to the prior fiscal year, that accounting thing.
Okay. Mr. Ingalls.
Ms. Willoughby, how is property tax revenue recorded? Because we get a property tax bill and a payment can be in full or over 4 quarters. Can you enlighten us as to how that's done?
There's governmental accounting standards, so we true that up at the end of the fiscal year based on the levy date.
Okay.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I thank you for providing that update and information. One last point, though, is, in your opinion, seeing what you see, are we at least moving in the right direction, or are we going in the opposite direction? What's your professional opinion about that?
In my professional opinion, and from what I'm seeing, we are holding back on spending and our active revenue is progressing nicely. We're moving in the right direction, as Commissioner Walsh stated. And so I think we are definitely doing okay.
So you see any great red flag issues?
I do not see any great red flag issues.
That is good news. Thank you very much.
Know
for
that I would be the one that would say.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
So we'll move on. Thank you for your time. I appreciate that. Next item is the CARES Act. For possible action, discussion to adopt resolution 2020R-072, establishing the Douglas County Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security CARES Act funding, a special revenue fund. Ms. Willoughby.
Terry Willoughby for the record. This is merely to create and segregate the CARES Act funding into its own fund for tracking purposes. So we have a clean record for the audit. And to create a new fund, I'm required to bring it to you for adoption.
Great. And I suppose you've coordinated this with E. Bailey. Is that correct?
They were very happy that I am doing this.
Okay, good. Let's keep the auditors happy.
Mhm.
Any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Ingalls? No,
sir.
Okay. If there are no questions, then we'd be looking for a motion.
Sir, I would move we adopt resolution 2020R-072, approving the establishment of the Douglas County CARES Act Special Revenue Fund as presented.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Walsh, a second by Commissioner Nelson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No nays? The motion carries 5-0. Congratulations, you have your
Another fund, yes.
your fund. You needed another fund to keep track of, right?
I did, yes.
Okay.
It's pretty funny.
For possible action, this is item 5, discussion to accept a coronavirus aid, relief, and economic security CARES Act funds in the amount of $8,931,061 and adopt resolution 2020R-074, establishing the budget of the Douglas County CARES Act Fund. Ms. Willoughby.
Terry Willoughby for the record. This is to establish the budget in the previously adopted CARES Act fund. This is in the allocation amount. This is similar to what we do with grants. It's a similar situation. We have an allocation in 8.9 million. And so we're establishing that budget and spending authority in the fund.
Good. You got the fund, you have to have money in it, right?
You have to have a
All right.
budget.
Yeah. All right. Any questions from board members? Seeing none. Is there an appetite on the board to have a recommended motion? Commissioner Walsh.
Yes, thank you. I move we accept $8,931,061 in CARES Act fund monies as presented and adopt a resolution 2020R-074.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Walsh, a second by Commissioner Engels. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any nays? No nays. The motion carries 5-0. Move on to item number 6. This is for possible action, discussion to approve the use of up to $476,000 in CARES Act funding to market the resumption of tourism activities in Douglas County and for steps taken to ensure a safe visitor experience due to the COVID-19 public health emergency, and to authorize the county manager to enter into sub-grant agreements with the Lake Tahoe Visitors Authority for up to $398,000 and the Carson Valley Visitors Authority up to $78,000 for this purpose. Ms. Granahan, Mr. Vandermeed, and Ms. Chapin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Lisa Granahan, Economic Vitality Manager. At the last board meeting of August 6th, the board approved the uses of the CARE Act funding for which the county will be receiving. One of those items was up to $500,000 for tourism recovery marketing. And the county manager indicated at the last board meeting that you would see a proposal and some grant agreements on that particular item. So we're bringing those to you today. One of the eligible uses of that CARES Act funding is for marketing resumption of tourist activities and steps to ensure a safe experience due to the pandemic. Tourism is a substantial economic driver, as you know, for Douglas County. It represents 10% of our gross regional product and 31.4% of our jobs by place of employment. We have seen significant impacts to our tourism economy, and you just went over those with our CFO when you were looking at some of our TOT. For May, it was down 86%, and in June, it was down 88%. This proposed campaign is a collaborative effort between the Carson Valley Visitors Authority, CVVA, and the Lake Tahoe Visitors Authority, LTVA. Collaboration is not new to the two entities. They have worked for years to cross-promote both the Valley and the Lake opportunities. There has been some curiosity as the split on this particular funding and why there's more going to the Lake. That actually came at the recommendation of Jan Vandermeed, the Visitor Authority Executive Director for the Valley, and he'll be talking about that in his presentation. I have been meeting the last several weeks with both Jan and Carol Chaplin, the Executive Director of the Lake Tahoe Visitors Authority, to develop this proposal, and have worked closely with our Chief Financial Officer and Deputy District Attorney to make sure that the potential uses and the way that the program is laid out will be eligible under the CARES Act. At the end of the presentation, I would request that the board consideration of approval of the funding and to authorize the city manager, the county manager, to sign the agreements. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dan Vandermeed. He'll start the presentation and share his screen.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, commissioners, and thank you to the audience. I appreciate your time and want to just take some minutes to go through our proposal here today. And at the end of the proposal, we'll have opportunity for questions. For the record, my name is Jan Vandermeed, and I'm the Executive Director of the Carson Valley Visitors Authority. And one of the two presenters today here with me is Carol Chaplin, the CEO for the Lake Tahoe Visitors Authority. And I will do the majority of the speaking at first, but we're both available for questions. And Carol will comment as she sees fit as we go through this. Real simply, going to go through this in what was taught. I worked for 10 plus years for Marriott, and I was given the opportunity that if you were standing in an elevator with Mr. Marriott, what would you do? And you have three things. what's the current situation, what are some of the considerations or complications, and what are the solutions or recommendations. So I think for the interest of time, it's a fairly effective way to go through this.
When you did that, that was an elevator pitch. Was it a 1 minute or 3 minute pitch?
Well, this one's going to be a little longer than 1 minute, but I'm trying to shoot for the most timely presentation possible. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I thank you for the reminder. I won't go through these line by line. I don't want to pain you with that, but I think it's important. There's a few slides that set up the current situation here. Most importantly, we believe in it's validated that the tourism is central to the Douglas County economy. The LTVA and CVVA are central to the communications most often out of market. We have, I noted today that, for example, with our organization, we work with literally hundreds of business partners that value tourism in our community. And yet a lot of times they find themselves marketing closer to home, and they need the effort of a destination marketing organization to help get the word out further. We have obviously been very hard hit as a tourism community by the COVID. Returning to a robust economy is going to take time. It's going to be slow. It's a very slow and gradual climb. I'll talk a little bit more about that. And notably, we're both 501c6 organizations that have been kind of left behind from federal perspective and other requests, like through PPP or EIDL or some of the other programs to date. And so we very much appreciate the opportunity to partner and collaborate. And if I can make a note here, when I say Lake Tahoe Visitors Authority in Carson Valley, it's all inclusive to tourism to the county. It includes the Lake Tahoe South Shore, but it also includes Genoa, Minden, Gardnerville, and Topaz Lake. So essentially you could say from lake to lake.
Hey, Jan, could I interrupt you for just a second? I think it's noteworthy to understand that actually Nevada is one of the harder hit states in visitor spending during COVID at about 65% decrease. The actual national average is 64. So we happen to be obviously one of the more rural states, and so we are suffering more. Some of the states are, maybe 20% down. And in the South Shore of Douglas County, our occupancy is close to 30% down over the last few months. So it is rather a dire situation, and I don't know that anybody needs to be reminded of that, but I thought those statistics were interesting.
Thank you, Carol. Okay, part of what got us here into this situation is that we work closely with the U.S. Travel Association, which is the larger body for tourism. We also work closely with Travel Nevada, and in a combination of information, and I'll just point out these green highlighted areas here in the presentation, as it exists for this CRF or coronavirus relief funding, the option exists to publicize the reopening of a destination that was closed, or publicizing the steps taken to ensure a safe travel experience. And it must be done in response to the crisis. So we, working with Lisa, working alongside Terry and Zach, we understand the importance of making this not just a message about tourism, but much more importantly, trying to build and restore traveler confidence while making people aware of the changes and opportunities in tourism as it exists within the community.
And jumping in just real quickly again, the travel sentiment and travel confidence is clearly for us something that has risen to the top. It is the most visited page on our website now, over lodging, over, well, obviously events are not happening anymore. We've had over 120,000 hits to that page since the pandemic started, and we continue to try to provide as much information as possible about how to travel here safely, what's open, behavior while you're here, And as we know, that also continues to change on a regular basis. So we need to keep updating that. And with us sitting on the state line, it's also confusing to a potential visitor to understand what they're allowed to do or what's open based on what our governor has mandated in Nevada and what the California governor has mandated on the California side.
Thank you, Carol. We participate through a variety of organizations that are keeping track of traveler sentiment on a weekly basis. They're now in week 23 of this event and keeping track of what's the priority to the customer. And this is a fairly small graphic. I apologize for that. But the essence of what I think should stand out here is that the things that rise the highest, and at one point it was up to 60% of the travelers prioritize the number one issue as safety and travel confidence. The number two issue, when you really look at many different icons, is they're looking for information, but they're looking for relative information. So as people are coming and they've made the commitment to come into a destination, once they're here, they have a certain expectation, but where we really can make a difference is the education and communication that we can do with people before they get here, and especially to be able to cite to them some steps and key things that we prioritize as a community in Douglas County to make sure that people are safe and can travel confidently. Carol, anything?
Actually, I jumped ahead of you on that one.
Yeah,
so,
you did.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we're essentially, like I've said, we're trying to restore travel confidence. It's not typical communications that we would normally be doing in this environment. We met actually with Terry this morning to get more into some of the details of what the requirements are of this program and make sure that we are in lockstep with the county, but with federal regulatory issues. We believe, and there's plenty of proof for this, that travel will return starting with regional customers that are willing to drive. People are not getting on airplanes right now. If you haven't been following it, air service in Reno went all the way down to less than 200 passengers a day in April, when it would normally be 8,000 passengers a day. And on recent reporting, it's about 2,000 out of 8,000 passengers per day. So it's coming back, but it's coming back slowly. And so most people will travel by road first. There's an expression called staycations, which essentially speaks to the idea that our own locals can be travelers and find ways to explore and discover things that they may not have known about in restaurants, hiking trails, outdoor activities, all the things that we do. Part of helping to restore the economy is also with the support of our own community. And the last point there is fairly obvious. There is no one silver bullet here, so we believe it's a comprehensive plan. So,
I just wanted to kind of emphasize something that Jan said, that our opportunity really and on our competitive edge is a bigger drive market. Visitors are willing to travel over 800 miles right now to get to their destination. And as he said, our fly markets have been, we've eliminated that from some of our, focus, for all of our focus for the time being. We're only at 45 flights a day, I think. And as Jan alluded to, people are not interested in getting on a plane. People are also interested in itineraries for safe and fun travel, and outdoor experiences, of course, are at the top of the list, which is something that we can really capitalize on in Douglas County.
Thank you, Carol. Okay, the considerations, let's see. What I want to present to you in a second here and get into more details, a more comprehensive plan that's been developed between the two organizations. as has been mentioned, we've worked very closely together on other projects in the past. We don't see each other as competitors. We see each other as complementary to one another. And as Lisa mentioned, I put forth the original plan, and I can walk you through the logic if is necessary in terms of the spending amounts by agency. We believe that in some of the elements of this plan, we're going to create assets that can be utilized by other businesses. And therefore, we're trying to do something that isn't, it's widespread to all the people that rely on our efforts, which are many, as I said. We believe there's efficiencies to be found between the two organizations that can help us here. And we believe that between now and the end of the year, which it's understood that any money that was going to be spent has to be spent before December 31st, is that we can create sufficient impact to the marketplace, not just to try to get people to travel today, but to just make a sufficient impression on people to help restore our business levels. We actually, Carol and I have talked about this. There's really 4 stages that we've worked in, similar to the health crisis. 0 is you spend nothing and you just stop because you need to go silent. There's bigger noise than you could ever make. Stage 1 is dream or plan for the future. Stage 2 is more engaging in planning. And stage 3 would be to actually create a call to action. Most of what we're trying to do here is in those first 2 stages, really, of either dream or plan, and not so much in trying to incite immediate visitation, because we believe that there's a need to move slowly and not create unnecessary negative impacts. 3 things to, on the complication side is there's a balancing act here. We respect the fact that this has taken some time for even the county to understand, but we will do our best to execute a fully planned out program between September and the end of the year. So speed is important. We believe that there's a need in certain aspects of this plan to retain our unique identities between Tahoe and the Carson Valley, and we do that with our branding. And then these are resources that are required beyond our normal budget, as mentioned. So there's, to do this plan in its entirety, there's 7 key components to it, and it might be better to get into it in the next slide, but just briefly, we start out with a planning session between Tahoe and the Carson Valley. We invite some other key creative thinkers and would help us to develop a campaign that would lead to an e-brochure. And then from that overall campaign and e-brochure, it would spread out into programs that we do by destination. So this is the breakdown of the budget. I have another page behind this that breaks it down by organization, but we would, and it is allowable by the rules that have been set forth by this program, that planning is valued and important. Obviously, we're doing things that we may not have done before, so we want to do it thoughtfully. So we would spend some money on planning. We would then develop a brochure that would be a countywide e-version of a brochure that can actually be scanned and utilized, or it could also be printable. And we would distribute that widely through a variety of different channels to talk about the idea of traveling safely and confidently and what that would mean for Douglas County. Then from that point on, there's 4 integrated steps to try to touch people through a combination of public relations, ad campaign or a media campaign, a locals campaign that would also be media oriented, and setting up the content and background to fulfill people's desire to know more through our websites. And then the last item on this plan talks briefly about some things that we have already expended and believe that we can be reimbursed for, and we're running that through Terry to make sure that it's acceptable. Any, Carol?
Nothing there yet.
Okay. So here we have it broken down by category. The first two items would be shared and highly integrated, and there'd be a lot of collaboration there, and would be equal expenditure on the two items. The PR campaign, there's an element of this that is the size and scope. And so Tahoe, we believe, has a greater audience in PR. And one of the things that's great about PR, it's what others say about you, not what you say about yourself. So we believe it's a very important part of the campaign. The media is largely dedicated to various forms of online advertising. There would be some traditional media, such as billboards or possibility of television, because you can create good content with television. But a large amount of the media can be done very effectively in a combination of Google ads, social media ads, online campaign directed ad programs that are very targeted to our audience and to the market area that we're trying to reach. In a very important aspect, as I meant before, we would do the same thing in local promotion and proportionately. And then the websites is really to take what needs to be done to more fully facilitate communication on this program and build out additional pages and content that supports the campaign.
So, and I'd like to mention that actually in terms of Tahoe South or LTVA, what we also bring to the table with this plan is a fairly robust social media following, if you will. We have 39,000 e-newsletter subscribers that we can hit with this campaign message. We can also tap into our Twitter followers, about 1,000, 64,000 Instagram followers, and 155,000 Facebook fans. So while we are looking at spending differently or splitting this up, we have two separate contracts. We can also leverage some of these other assets and send the same message to a wider audience that typically only hears about the Tahoe Township or the South Shore of Lake Tahoe.
So similarly, Carson Valley Visitors Authority has an email list of about 8,000 travelers that are loyal to Carson Valley. We also have social media followers in Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook that total about 40,000 followers in total. And so we would do the same. Where given the opportunity, this message would be an important message to distribute to those same audiences and isn't built into the cost here. And I should also mention that there is no staffing time, as is by rules, built into this. This is all for what we would need to do, working with third-party vendors and identifying those third-party vendors, and then placing and producing the project as it's outlined. So we arrive at the question and answer.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. See if can you take the thing down, the Q&A down, so we can have the whole thing back? Thank you. Commissioner Ingalls.
Yes, I have several questions, and any of you folks can answer these. We heard just earlier today at this meeting that the hotels are at capacity up at the lake, and I'm getting a lot of complaints from people who live at the lake in regard to VHRs, that they are at capacity. There was a news article recently where people who live at the lake were out protesting the inundation of tourists. The a couple of weeks ago, they had that car show up there that just completely overwhelmed everything. And yet you sit here and talk about that you don't have visitors. Can you enlighten me as to why there's no visitors and what this is that I'm following?
Yeah, Commissioner Ingalls, I'd like to help you with that one. The hotels are not at 100% capacity. Most of our hotels are operating at about 70%. They are following the guidelines, the COVID guidelines that say that you need to have a certain amount of time between guests. They have to wait until their guests have left and before, for several hours before they come into those units. And the other thing that they're experiencing right now is the lack of labor to actually clean those rooms. So they are not at 100% occupancy. As far as the protests go, there's a lot of emotion, as we know, running high in all directions with COVID-19. We have a lot of day trip visitors now. They are going to the beaches. A lot of pools and other facilities are not open in certain areas, and so there are some pinch points that are really, the residents are having a hard time with. Trash is a big issue right now. We have a lot of to-go on the California side of the South Shore. As you may know, it is only outdoor dining. You can't dine inside. So a lot of people are opting for takeout, and we have a lot of single-use containers now that seem to be, adding to the whole thing. As far as the car show goes, that was not permitted. That was not planned by anyone. It was not supported or sanctioned. And I don't know where they came from. I believe that the reference to Drew Murin had to do with another car show that was planned and had been canceled. But this was—
Well, I hear what you're saying, but nevertheless, the sheriff's department, our sheriff's department, along with other agencies, incurred substantial overtime costs to deal with it. I'm getting a lot of calls from people who live up there close to VHRs, and their tranquility of life is being inconvenienced by loud parties, parking, and just utter chaos. And most of these people are very accommodating and rational, and they typically don't complain, but they finally reach the breaking point. And I don't see anything in this proposal that talks about how you're going to deal with the folks who live up there year round. This is all for the tourists, and it appears you have plenty of tourists.
Well, again, this fund is specifically to restore business levels. This is not to an education piece that has to do with safe and healthy travel. It doesn't have anything to do with the VHR segment. I would have to tell you that as a resident of Douglas County, but living at the lake, I know that there are second homeowners in some of these units, these homes now that have come up here. They are not renting those units. They are not your typical VHRs. They are not necessarily quiet either. They are people that have had second homes and are enjoying their real estate. So I think that you're right. To some extent, I think some of these VHRs are not being regulated, and they are not good actors. But we are not at business levels that are close to 2019. And the statistics are
everything that was presented was to advertise the lake.
No, it is not to advertise the lake at all. We are looking at a collaborative effort. I would say that
okay, let me rephrase that.
Let me just finish the sentence, and then I'm sorry, but we are not scheduled. We are not anticipated in destinations like ours to recover to 2019 levels for 3 years. And those are revenues to Douglas County.
I hear what you're saying. but everything that was presented in that breakout in regard to the allocation of the funds was towards advertising, be it the lake or the valley in combination. And I don't know if any of that should some of the businesses be considered up there? I don't know how they've been impacted by this whole thing. Everything
well,
I hear.
I mean, we do have a, casino, a small casino that closed it, before the end of March.
I'm aware
and
of
never
that.
open again. So there are those businesses. The idea was that there is a local element in there. And from my perspective, we have an opportunity to recommend and to send messages to people that says, come up and stay at the lake or stay in the valley and travel in between and enjoy the assets and the beautiful places and the interesting places that the other one has. We've always been successful in helping people plan itineraries. And it would be, especially as we move into a fall season, I think that's our opportunity to promote
this is toward the end, yes. One of the last items.
The reason I bring this up is that it's a lot of money. And how's an outfit like Casey's doing? How's the Chart House doing? How are some of these places doing financially? Have they been impacted by the virus?
Yes, I would say Casey's has been absolutely directly impacted by the virus.
Now, so I don't know, Mr. Cates, maybe you can
close for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, and these restaurants are probably hurting worse than any other business.
It's true. You're absolutely right.
And I don't know, Mr. Cates, these funds, is there going to be anything left over for, the independent businesses? Is this designated just for the entities that are presenting here today?
Let me help you a little. There's $1 million that he's programmed for businesses and Lisa is supposed to be coming up with a program of how to grant those monies to businesses.
Okay, so that's separate then.
Yes, that's correct.
Chairman.
But I do think that this is a very generalized program that's been proposed, and I think it needs more specificity. I think we could go with a budget, but I don't think we're going to commit the monies until we have a more specific program to look at, which I think is what they're trying to get to. But it needs more meat on the bone, I think, before we say, yeah, go ahead and spend that money, in my view. I don't know. Larry's shaking his head, so I may be wrong on this. I probably am. I'll turn it over to Commissioner Rice and see what he has to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One thing I wanted to add here is that this program is to bring back the families that we have been seeing in the past who come up here, they behave themselves, they have a great vacation, they go home, they leave money. The people that have been coming up here are people that are not our normal. Correct me where I'm wrong, Carol. These are not our normal visitors that we have up here. These are people, young people that are not going to school. School's out. They're not back into school. They're not working. They come up here, and one of the reasons why the citizens are in around Lake Tahoe, both on the California side and the north end of the lake, as well as here, these people are coming in and buying their takeout food and just tossing their bags and garbage anywhere they feel like it. And this isn't our normal visitor. These aren't the people that this program is to attract. Being on the LTVA and the TDVA, I see what they're trying to do, and I agree with what they're trying to do. And it's not to bring in the people that are causing the problems. It's to bring in the people that enjoy the beauty in our neighborhoods without creating problems. Correct me where I'm wrong, Carol.
You're right. This is a different kind of customer, and as I mentioned, a lot of it is day trip customers. I can't give you numbers on how that works because we depend on lodging information, and I don't have any way to have real time, information on day trips. But it's hot in the valley. It's hot every place. We may get an influx of people for days because of smoke now. These are the kind of people that we're seeing that are going to the beach, that are spending the day and then leaving and driving a longer distance in order to do that. Obviously, with 70% occupancy at the max, we are not in that sold out situation.
Commissioner Walsh.
Well, I was shaking my head, Mr. Chair, because I don't think we're here to approve an individual budget for the CVA, Carson Valley Visitors Authority, and TDVA. I think we're here to approve a grant, and I don't think we're going to be monitoring their budget. They kind of set out a specific, overall budget right now. I mean, we're not going to approve little minor changes to it. That's my opinion.
Well, let me correct one thing. This is $476,000 of CARES money that's been given to the county to spend on this. It's not really a grant so much as it is a budget item for us. Commissioner Nelson?
You're muted, Dave.
You're muted, Dave. Dave.
Yeah, I'm going to surprise Commissioner Chairman Penzel, and I think kind of go where he was going. I would like to see the where we're going with this. I'd like to see the small business helped out a lot more. I think the restaurants are being limited right now to about 50% of their normal customer base. They're not allowed to fill their restaurants any longer. They can only go to about 50%. Hotels are 70% full. Let's rearrange this money. Let's maybe go 1.25 million on the small business area and reduce this one by maybe 250,000. I think that would be more inclined to go for something like that personally.
Actually, if I can just make a comment, we could add 250,000 out of our CARES fund to the small business. We could make it 1.2. This was just a budget item that Mr. Cates and Lisa came up with. So we could add money and not reduce this. Commissioner Walsh?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole idea of the program for remarketing the opening of Lake Tahoe, I think the whole idea is to get more people to come to our restaurants, to come to our businesses, our small businesses. I don't understand what exactly Dave is talking about. I mean, you're talking about small businesses here in Douglas County, Dave. I get that. I get it. But a lot of that business that goes to the small businesses in Douglas County comes from tourism.
I think that what we're trying to do is get the visitors authorities energized to attract more visitors to Douglas County, which means we've got to utilize more of Douglas County than just the hotels. To me, I believe that we've got to start really marketing Topaz. That's the other lake in Douglas County. I think we saw last night at CWSD a proposal to create landings on the river from Cradlebaugh down to Mexican Dam. And they're going to need funding so that they can create pullouts and put-ins in the vernacular, which is where you would put the boat or the kayak in. And I think that needs to be done. I think some specifics in terms of ATVs. This is a great ATV area that we have. but it's unorganized. We could do a lot with the ATVs. We could put some macadam out for these folks to park their trailers and their RVs at, and then take their ATVs out. We could have trails, and we could design those trails. We could have them shown as a map, but we don't. We don't do any of that. We could have restrooms out there and make it a real ATV area, an adult ATV area, but we don't do that. I think the media will catch on to that. I think you got to have the facilities, and I think this money affords us the opportunity to do that. The other part of this is that most of the people that are coming here are going to come from California. I think that's a fact. I've been told the ATVs in California have to pay to operate in ATV specific areas. We don't charge to do that. Do we want to do that? Would that allow us to attract more people because we don't charge, because we have a better mapping system, because we have some facilities for them? Those are some of the specifics I think that really need to be on the meat of the bone of this. I know that that's pretty specific for where you are in the planning process, Jan, but please address whatever you'd like to.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Jan Vandermeid with the Carson Valley Visitors Authority. One thing I think that's in need of clarification is if all I ever did was put pretty pictures of lodging properties out for people to consider, I would be completely a failure. And everything we do is about promoting the attributes of our community, which includes dining, history, outdoor recreation. All the things that have been mentioned here are what we do. The second component is, we are referred to as a DMO, Destination Marketing Organization, but no one in the industry thinks of themselves that way anymore. And they think of themselves as a DMMO, which is a combination of marketing and management, because we recognize the need to develop programs that are good for the community and good for the tourist. And so I hear what you're saying, but what this particularly, and the premise that this was set up by, is to offer the idea that we need help in the recovery, and in particular, outside of our general local community area, we need to communicate, and we do that louder than some of these other businesses. We very much, let me give you one example. Throughout this process, we have tried to repeatedly publish the information produced by the chamber for the dining, so people know what they can do and how they can do it, whether it's indoor or outdoors. And we would continue, when it comes to this program, to tell people what they can do and how they can do it safely. So all the businesses that have been mentioned are people that we're trying to generate not only room tax, but sales tax and just general revenues and income for this community to bring it back.
Mr. Chairman?
Well, let me get to Mr. Ingles first. Mr. Ingles, go ahead.
I hear all of these plans and they all have merit. And it would appear that the reason that this money came in is because there is an immediacy needed to help out people who are in the restaurant business, wait staff, people who live on tips and things of that nature. And I guess there's going to be money left over for that, but the other things are a longer term strategy. They aren't going to have an immediacy about it. And what we're looking at in regard to these businesses is an immediacy. These people have mortgages, they've got bills to pay, and a lot of them, they've been laid off, they haven't got the money. The wife and I were up at Glen Eagle last week, and the entire bar is closed down. Out of the week. So it's things like this where there is an immediacy, because some of these guys that have these restaurants, they have mortgages and they have to pay their mortgages and they have to have money to live on. And that's, in my mind, that's where the immediacy of this money coming in from the government was to be directed. So that's just my perspective. Thank you.
Well, let me clarify something, Mr. Ingles. Last week, Carson City was directed by the governor to close down the bars, and because their indicators in the COVID evaluation process had gone up. They've come back down this week, I think. But that was one thing, and that differentiated them from us, where our bars are not under that specific order. And that's what we want to do, is we want to keep it that way. And I think there's a reason why you couldn't even go over 70% of occupancy in the hotels, because of the restrictions of the COVID process. I have no idea, but I think that's something we probably should know. And I think that the visitors authorities would know what all those rules are for us, and maybe we need to have that brought out. Mr. Cates?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to clarify some things. I think some of the members have already touched on this, but fundamentally, this is about our coronavirus relief funds and the applicability of this program to be used for that. I've heard a lot of discussion about attracting visitors, cross advertise or marketing the valley versus the lake. And it can't just be a visitors campaign. The focus has to be on COVID-19 impacts. It's got to really be focused on that, or it won't be eligible. And a comment was made earlier about moving monies around, and I just want to share with you a document the board has seen before. So I assume everybody can see this. This is the budget that we submitted to the state, which the board reviewed and approved at a prior meeting. And you gave me authority in that meeting to make some adjustments to these monies as we go. So we're talking about the small business grant program. We have $1 million earmarked for that. We also had $500,000 for remarketing of tourism. So there was a discussion about whether we could decrease remarketing tourism and increase small business grant. It definitely is a game of balancing between these categories, and the money so far is allocated somewhere. So the $500,000 that's allocated here was predicated on this presentation. I think as long as it is very clearly aimed at the guidelines that Jan went through, that it would be eligible. I think maybe some of the questions that the board may want to ask, one that I think is a fair question is, there's a lot of needs, right? There's a lot of different ways we can spend this money. One thing I think is worth noting for the board, clearly the visitors authorities are being impacted by the decrease in TOT. That's a major funding source for them. Because they're a nonprofit like the county, we can't just offset revenues, right? So we have to be doing things that are COVID related. It should be noted though, but before the shutdowns, TOT revenue was up a lot. We were all having a really good year. And I think it's a fair question to ask about the impacts to their budgets and how much need there really is for this, as opposed to the existing funding sources that they have for marketing. I know there's impacts to them. I'm sure Jan and Carol can speak to that, but I think that's a fair question to consider in the hierarchy and needs of all these different things. And the one thing that I'm a little concerned about, I think, Mr. Chairman, you just spoke about, is that we're in a situation and forth. And I think we're in a good place at the moment, but there was a couple weeks back that it was looking like there might be more restrictive measures and more shutdowns. And so to be pushing more visitors in that environment, one may question the return on investment. And I think one thing that I would like to hear about is like how much time is needed to put this together. How much could it be deferred? Could we look at reducing any of those expenditures? I think those are fair questions. And one last thing I'll mention, as I talked about the last time we covered this, we have half the money now. We have a pretty good allocation to submit to the state to use up those funds. I would suggest that these funds, if they're allocated to this purpose, come out of that second pot of money, and that we maybe hold that back as long as it's practicable and see how some of this other stuff shakes out and see where we're going with the governor's regulations. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I think it's certainly a worthwhile effort, and certainly it is eligible for these types of funds given the parameters that Jan went through. And that's all I have to share about that.
Thank you. Could you take your shared thing down? Thanks. Commissioner Rice, and then was it Commissioner Nelson? Did you have a question? Must be Commissioner Engels. Did you want to make?
Just real quick, I don't dispute that the money can be used up at with the Visitors Authority. It's pretty generic the way it's being presented, and maybe there could be some things that could be incorporated into your promotional campaigns, like coupons or restaurants or something, and we help to generate activity for them in your marketing. I don't know. I mean, I support the thing in general, and but it's how we can help the local economy and the local businesses. So these are just some ideas we're throwing around, and I'll support it. But how do we do it? How do we help these businesses, because they're hurting?
Commissioner Rice.
I think the conversation has been a good one, but I think that we're missing the point of this recommended motion, and that's the resumption of tourism activities in Douglas County, the whole county, for steps taken to ensure a safe experience through the COVID-19 health emergency, and to authorize the city manager, the county manager, to enter into sub-grant agreements with the Tahoe Douglas Visitors Authority and the Carson Valley Visitors Authority. And I think that I would like to get back to that. And I think that this is exactly what that money was intended to do. And it's exactly what was in the county manager's breakdown when we approved it at the last meeting. So I would like to move that we approve the use of up to $476,000 in CARES Act funding to market the resumption of tourism activities in the county, and for steps taken to ensure safe experience through the COVID-19 public health emergency, and authorize the county manager to enter into sub-grant agreements with the Lake Tahoe Visitors Authority up to $398,000, and the Carson Valley Visitors Authority up to $78,000 for this purpose.
Second.
Further discussion? Yeah, I think from my standpoint, I'd like to see more specificity. What happens is we're fencing this in, and the county manager has just said that he doesn't look to expend this kind of money until the second half. I think that from my standpoint, I would approve them allowing to budget that money any way that they see fit. It might be more than $78,000 for Carson Valley, and it might be more for Lake Tahoe. I don't know until they look at it with some real meat on the discussion bone. I don't think that we need to make such specific numbers available here. I'd like to see them come back and say, okay, I know that like for instance, he said I think $320,000 for media. So how's that break down? Is that $50,000 for advertising in a market, or is it $50,000 for TV? How are you looking to allocate that? And does it really make sense overall? And is it going to complement both areas, major areas, the valley and the lake? And so I think it's a good program. I agree with expending the money to do it. I'm not sure this is the right amount, and I need to be convinced that that's the right amount. I don't mind giving the county manager the authority to work with them to do that, but I think to approve sub-grants at this point is premature, especially since we're not going to be spending it right away. Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, it's too early for me too. I think that we haven't even started the small business thing yet. What if we have more than $1 million come in for that? I would much rather see some of this money be preserved for that, till at least that program opens up and we see what's going to happen.
Well, actually, I do agree with Commissioner Nelson on that. Commissioner Ingalls?
Well, basically, it's a good point. And so go ahead, Commissioner Walsh.
Yes, thank you. I think when the county manager and his staff recommended the $1 million small grants to small businesses, I think they did their research. I think they went ahead and they looked at the businesses and what the rules and regulations are, and expending $1 million may be the maximum we can even do. We don't know that, but we can actually allocate more later on if we want to out of a different pot of money. I don't see how this is any way related to this grant program for TDBA and CBA, Carson Valley Business Authority. I think that the amount of money that is allocated to them is going to help our small businesses. It's going to put heads in beds and it's going to. I see you, Dave. Hold on. It's going to help small businesses, and it's going to put. Can I finish or not?
Yeah, finish, please.
Go ahead, finish. All right, nobody's stopping.
Finish. Well, put your hand in the face. I can't see anything. Jeez. Anyhow, I think this program is going to help small businesses in Douglas County, both at the lake and down here in the valley. And by the way, the Visitors Authority, they promote Topaz Lake a lot. So I think it's going to help us overall. And we won't know until we actually start to remarket.
That's why Henry made a big fuss out of it, because he's still talking.
Yeah, Dave, your microphone's still on.
Okay.
I'm done.
I think let's put it in a little perspective. The county manager said that, and I'm going to paraphrase what he said when he gave us the budget. And he said that they're hiring a company, the same company that's out of Las Vegas or that's working with Clark County, to come up with a program to grant money to the small businesses. And he said that it should take effect sometime in the next 2 months, I believe is what his time frame was. I totally support granting money to these small businesses for the reasons Mr. Ingalls and Mr. Nelson have anticipated or pro-offered here. It will not take money, approving this money will not take money from the small business situation. However, as what pertains to this, I think we have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure it's spent in the right manner and shape. And I just don't see enough specificity to say, okay, just go out and spend $475,000. I wouldn't do this if it was a private company. Give me more information. You know, I don't know if Marriott, if JW would allow you to spend it based on what you presented, but I think that we have a responsibility to make sure that this is going to the right places to do the right things. If we're convinced, and we're not operating hotels and restaurants and the rest of that, that this marketing program is going to be effective, then you can run with the money. But I'd like to see more specificity personally. That's,
Yeah,
so,
I'd second that.
Mr. Vandermeed?
For the record, Jan Vandermeed, and I agree with you, sir. I would absolutely want to do that. My reputation and my job that I've done for this community and any job prior was always premised on executing properly. And what I mean by that is that I'm also, before I came to this meeting today, I had a board of directors meeting, which is our board, which is made up of 9 members in the community that includes food and beverage, which includes the airport, which it includes different aspects of the community. And they understand that there's more to come here, that we need to add those specifics that you're asking for. And we have every expectation and desire to do that. We also, in training with Terry beforehand, we understand that we have an obligation to put out certain elements of this program to bid so that they're properly selected and chosen by federal guidelines. So there's lots of work to be done, but we're asking for your support to move forward and start moving in the right direction. And if we, up to this point, I can tell you, just as a comparison, I've made over 10 requests to try to get PPP funding on behalf of our organization, and unsuccessfully because they don't allow 501c6s. So we just are trying to do something which we believe will help. And in the amount that we've presented here, if you look at it in its entirety, it's about 5% of the $8.9 million. And as it relates to tourism, we don't believe as the 2 DMOs that we make up tourism, but we help tourism and all its entities that are supported to speak to people outside our community very effectively.
Okay. I'm not quite sure whether you're supporting what I'm saying or you're saying that you already done everything you can do.
Well, I think what we have to be, do we need to come back to the board here for further review, or are we able to start moving and making things happen and work with the county manager?
My sense is that the board thinks this is a good idea. And I don't think we're really arguing that $476,000 is too much. It may be too little. But the county manager is saying that it wouldn't be funded until we get the second tranche of funding anyway. So in that interim, can you come back to us working at what the plans that you have, and then give us the specificity about how that's going to be spent? Is that reasonable?
Well, I think we'd have to gain quotes then, if I understand you correctly, gain quotes without a commitment to the dollars, which means that we can't commit to the vendors or to the idea until such time as it comes back to the board. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, but I'm not saying you have to wait 60 days. I'm saying you can come back any other time where you have some real specificity on it. You know, it just seems to me to be an open-ended purchase order, and I don't want to approve something like that. I think you understand that. Yeah. But I'm willing to look at how you want to spend that money in a more specific manner. I know that our budget needs to be worked on too. I mean, if you look at it, the last item on our budget is like $500,000 for IT support for workforce development. We're not doing anything, as far as I know, on doing that part. But I think Mr. Cates will probably tell me I'm wrong, and he's got some kind of plan for it. But I have not heard that. I've only heard a specific plan for a couple of these things. But I think his approach is reasonable in not funding it until the second quarter, which, I mean, the second tranche of funding, which I think you understand too. So it's not you're being denied. It's, hey, we want to support it, but we need a little more meat on the bone, if you can use that phrase. If I voted for this now, what you're telling me is that you could go to a media outlet and say, okay, I want to buy $320,000 worth of media support. And then they would design a program. I don't know why you still couldn't do that. That's your budget. You put $320,000 on the table there. So why can't you go to a media outlet and have them define some of that and then come back and give us a little more broad definition? Isn't that reasonable?
It's not unreasonable, but it's also comes with a lot of weight, because our offices are small staffed, and to go out and seek out a bunch of this additional information with no promise to the future is a little bit difficult. You say, like, just as an example, this media spending alone requires multiple bids. So we have to go out and seek out multiple bids, get a plan put together, and not make a commitment to a vendor until such time as we know we can actually spend the money.
You can come back at any time to make the commitment. We're not telling you that you have to wait 50 days or 60 days. The county manager is the one that said he wants to do it out of the second tranche of funding, not us.
Mr. Chairman.
So he's in charge of how you get paid. We're in charge of, is this a good deal? Okay. I think, I don't know.
So Mr. Chair, Carol Chaplin, I just want to mention to you, and I am not necessarily arguing the point of a more laid out plan, but my understanding is that the funding is available for use on a short time frame, and the planning that needs to take place and the speed to market. When we come back to you, I think I understand, I might be wrong on this, but I think I understand that your next meeting, we are no longer able to get on that agenda. So it will be another 2 weeks after that. So it'll be the end of September. And in order to get into the market, we're looking at the middle of October. So you are looking at
it would be in September. I mean, we got 2 meetings in September. I don't know what their schedule is for when that would happen, but we haven't even looked at the agenda for the first meeting in September.
Well, I was given a deadline of the 17th for information for an item. That's all. So that's August 17th. So I thought that window had closed for the September meeting. All I'm saying is that there is a little bit of time before we get to market with any of these ideas that we would come up with, and so we can't put it in place tomorrow. If you were to give it to us today, we can't put it in place on September 15th if we get money on the 14th. So that's all I'm saying is that
even if you were able to put it in place on the 3rd of September, it wouldn't start happening until well after that anyway.
That's correct. That's what I'm trying to say.
So, I just think that this is, you're getting basically what you want. I would approve a budget of $476,000 for this. But that's the budget. Now you got to come up with a spending authority on it, and we've got to understand that. And we can give that authority to the county manager, which is also what you're asking for. But I don't think he knows, and I don't think he wants to be the sole authority on that, unless maybe I'm speaking out of school for you. But do you want to be the sole authority and say yes or no, Mr. Cates?
So, Mr. Chairman, just a few clarifications if I could. So I wanted to point out to the board that this would likely need to be allocated out of the second set of money. That money should be forthcoming fairly soon. We've been given instructions on how to report back to the state for September 1, And if they approve that, we should be getting our second set of money shortly thereafter. So it's not as far out in the future. You know, it's not like the second quarter that we would get the money. I think if the board likes this plan, it would be okay to authorize a grant award, perhaps subject to review by the county manager. We're going to have to work with them anyway to make sure what they're putting together is going to be eligible for those funds. If that's what the board would like to do, we could include in that to have them come back at a certain time with more details of that plan once they've acquired some of the assets they need to put the plan in place. Or we could wait, but I just wanted to clarify the timeline for the second set of money is coming very soon. And I think it would be okay to award it now, subject to my final approval and review, something along those lines. I don't know if that helps.
Mr. Chair, I believe that that's in part of the motion, that the county manager can enter into these sub-grant agreements. So I think this actually authorizes the county manager to do that.
Okay.
Mr. Cates, excuse me.
Go ahead, Mr. Engel.
Have you got any kind of guidelines on tourist advertising as it relates to this money and just in general?
Yes, and that was in Jan's presentation. He actually had quotes right out of the CARES Act. I don't have that in front of me. If you could bring it back up, perhaps. But yes, as long as it's to help with recovery related to COVID, telling places that have been closed are now open, how to take precautions, those sort of things. Yeah, it is eligible. But I said the devil's in the details. We've got to make sure the plan we have does all of that. Otherwise we're not going to be able to reimburse them for it.
And there is a sense of urgency to get this going.
Yeah.
So, well, Chair, you want to bet on the come line and we grant the money and then we get into the details later as to where it went?
What's your recommendation, Mr. Engels?
Well, if it's granted today, it's going to take a while for them to get cranked up, get this all going. So there's a lead time of probably 30 days. And in general, it seems to be in accord with what the spirit of the grant money is for. And I understand your point too. Where's it all going? And if it all up go to the Joe Schmid Lab advertising company, well, why them? But I'll take Mr. Vandermeer's comment at face value, and we'll put our trust in him to give guidance as to where this is going to be allocated.
Okay. Well, how about if we have an amendment to this that the county manager will make a report within 30 days as to how they're proceeding on it.
Okay, that's good.
I'll accept that as a friendly amendment.
Would the maker of the motion accept the additional amendment?
I do.
And let's put in there that any of this grant money that is not recognized as being acceptable for where this advertising goes, it'll come out of the county manager's pocket.
That's not a friendly amendment.
No, but you'll be on it like a duck on a June bug. I know that.
Okay, and so the maker of the motion would accept that. And what about the second? Do you accept that?
I will accept it. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Vandermeer, you want to try and talk us out of it? You're on.
Sorry, no, I do not, sir. But also in the agreement, which we've also reviewed, there's a clause that says there's a 30-day cancellation. So we don't want to get so far out in front of ourselves that you don't like us.
Okay.
I'll bet you can't do that. But, okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Rice, a second by, oh, I forgot. Does anybody else have any comments they want to make? Okay, a motion by Commissioner Rice, a second by Commissioner Walsh with an amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays?
Nay.
Was there a nay?
One.
Okay. Okay, so the motion passes 4-1. All right, thank you, Mr. Vandermeed and Ms. Chaplin.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. That was easy. All right, we'll go to item number 7. For presentation only. Reports, updates from county commission members concerning the various boards and/or commissions that they may be a member of, a liaison to, or meetings, functions they have attended. Okay, anybody got any reports? Mr. Ingles.
Some of you may have seen this, but the endeavor that's been going forward to entice production companies to come up to Northern Nevada to be gaining fruit. NNDA has more in the pipeline. There's a production company that's in Gardnerville and Minden right now, and you may have seen them around. They're not real big, but there's more to come, and there'll be press releases coming out in regard to all of this. So, our area is like a big back lot for movies, and they come up here and they don't have the restrictions that you have in a major metropolitan area, say like LA, where the city permit is like $500 a day, and I don't know, masks and all these restrictions. So they come up here and we show them our hospitality, and they go, gee, this is pretty nice. So the word is getting out. The Hallmark channel has been up at the lake. This other entity is down here, but there's more in the pipeline. So that's what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you for that report. It's a good, positive statement. All right. Any others? Commissioner Walsh.
I haven't got anything to report. I just want to applaud Commissioner Nelson and NNDA for really working and pushing this concept forward.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? If there are no further reports, then we'll open public comment. The public comment line 775-783-6007 is open. We'll take public comment. Is there any public comment right now, Ms. Poole?
Natalie Wood, for the record, we have public comment. I'll start playing them.
Okay.
Ellie Waller, W-A-L-L-E-R, closing public comment. I chose to participate in the master plan survey audit provided to the Planning and Board of Commissioners. Of particular interest is the housing element and where it's trying to go. Density increases seem to be the answer to affordable and achievable housing. Proposed actions, Housing Action 1.3, amend the Douglas County Development Code to include minimum density requirements in the multifamily residential and mixed-use commercial zoning districts. Why is a minimum necessary, and why isn't a maximum identified? Housing Action 1.7, Douglas County will amend the building permit allocation and growth management ordinance to exempt accessory dwelling units from the allocation provisions of the ordinance. Are you kidding? The citizens of Douglas County must be part of any growth management ordinance changes. The elephant in the room is there will never be enough housing to satisfy all those that want to live and work in Carson Valley. And frankly, can we legally restrict purchasing homes for those who prove they live here and work here? Housing Goal 5, to increase availability of affordable home ownership opportunities for households with incomes up to 80% of AMI. I think staff needs to provide a chart showing average median income levels so the citizens of Douglas County know what they are being asked to possibly subsidize. And tell me, why should we subsidize median income levels? The Prosperity Center has been looking at this problem for years and no solutions have come to the table except for subsidizing. And who pays for that? Me and you as taxpayers. The more recent effort to address moderate income housing needs is in response to the growing concern identified by local employers who hire at wages that do exceed traditional lower income housing eligibility requirements, but below what is required to afford a moderate priced home in our area. The reality is that house prices in our region outpace incomes at all levels. Now I'll switch to the land use policy. Policy 3.1, Douglas County shall adopt community and regional plans to establish the special goals and policies necessary to reflect and enhance communities' desired character. These plans shall be part of the Douglas County Master Plan. Land use policies 4.1 and 5.1 in identified urban and rural communities, the goals and policies of adopted community plans shall apply, as well as policies contained in other sections of the master plan. I say this state shall be part of the master plan. The community plan should be updated now as part of the process to reflect the future goals and policies being proposed for future approval in this update. These are prime examples why the master plan update should not be on a timeline for December approval. I am anxiously awaiting.
Okay, time ended up on that one. For the next one.
Jim Slade. And item number 3 this afternoon, CFO Ms. Willoughby made her audit.
Can you hear that okay? The quality is pretty poor.
What did you ask?
Can you hear that okay? I'll keep playing it, but the quality is really poor.
Presentation on the revenue update and economic indicators for the county. The discussion focused on the economic indicators, comments on taxable sales and the unemployment rate, which fortunately is improving, but far from good. There were no comments, however, on the revenue sources, which examination of the document that she prepared shows we're down 2.8 million year over year, June 20 over June 19. And obviously this has caused disruptions and issues of both services to the public as well as staffing, which then reflects the services as well. And that is why it was so inappropriate to commit 30+ million to an event center at the lake in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic and the inevitable slowdown and fall in revenues. We made that decision during the pandemic, knowing that inappropriate.
Did it just stop?
What was that?
Miss Wood, did that just stop?
No, it's still playing, but it's just really poor quality. There's a few seconds left on it.
Let it play.
Okay, I'll play the next one.
We need some access to be able to find out online who is and who is not authorized to have their vacation rentals. My name is Gary Smelson, SMELSON 310-245-7526. The reason that the hotels aren't filled up is because they're jam-packing the vacation rentals with far more people than should be in there. They're blocking the streets, and it's very likely, from what I understand, that some of these in our neighborhood are not properly licensed, so you're not getting revenue from them. This whole thing stinks.
Okay, next.
Hi, my name is Pamela Jimenez, PAMELAJIMENEZ. I live on Meadow Lane, State Line, Nevada, and my topic is on vacation rental. Impose the current regulations in place. There needs to be more restrictions and enforcement on the vacation rentals, including a max number of people per bedroom, a max occupancy for vacation rentals, no parking on the street, not rented as more than one unit per house or property. I have one property on my street, 168 Meadow, that is rented as two separate units when one is a converted garage. We've had multiple issues since July 4th in our neighborhood, including safety. It's not been safe getting down our street. Fire hydrants have been blocked, trespassing in our properties, and just getting down the street has been difficult, and lots of illegal U-turns. It's not safe currently. Thank you for your time.
Okay, that was the last public comment message received, and it was at 2:56 p.m.
We'll give it another 5 minutes in case anybody wants to call in. It'll be 3:20. Okay, it's 3:20. Have you received any more?
No, no, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Then I will declare Commissioner Ingles.
In these comments that we have heard from these folks up at the lake, the people who live there are just getting hammered by these VHRs. And we either have to address the regulations or be more vigorous in our enforcement, get the sheriff to be more active. I mean, you heard that lady, and if somebody's parked in front of a fire hydrant, tow that car. I don't care if they come running out and say, oh, that's my car, I'll move. No, it gets towed and then you deal with it later. You already violated parking in front of a hydrant. And you know as well as I do, Wes, that this wouldn't be tolerated in other municipalities. So I think we need to be very cognizant of what these people are they're pleading for our help. Thank you.
Fairness to the county, I have been in direct contact with our assistant county manager, and she's well aware of the problem. And they have fired one group, hired another group, and the sheriff's department is now going to be handling noise and parking complaints, when before it was done by this group that did nothing. So,
Before we get too far in this discussion, why don't we ask the county manager to schedule this in the next meeting for an update on where we are on the VHRs?
I think that would be an excellent idea.
Yep.
Okay. That way we don't violate the open meeting law and we get the information.
I noticed Doug's setting up straight, so
Well, I saw his picture. So,
commissioners, it's been delightful as always. Well, not always, but it has been.
you all have a good night, and thank you all for attending.
Okay.
Good day.
Patrick, can you give me a call?